Welcome to Visualize, the podcast where collaboration fuels change. I'm your host, Chris Baker, and each week we'll explore incredible connections between nonprofits, businesses, and the community. This is a space where we highlight inspiring partnerships, uncover strategies for creating meaningful impact, and share stories that show how working together can make all the difference. Whether you're a nonprofit leader, a business owner, or someone just passionate about building connections, this podcast is for you. Welcome back to Visualize. Today I have an amazing guest. Thank you so much for joining us. Tanya Barrett from the McDavid Group Charities. Welcome.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
And I'm so thankful to even be here.
Thank you for coming down. When we first met, it was just kind of like, I didn't really know a ton about your organization, but we got on the call and it was kind of like our energy started to shift. I don't know if you noticed that too when we actually had our Zoom call. So for me, it was just kind of like, wow, we're having this connection. We're talking about nonprofits. We're talking about helping people. So I want to have you say in your own words a little bit more about your journey and how McDavid Group Charities has really kind of expanded and where they're going.
Well, I really appreciate that, Chris. Yeah, I felt the energy shift too. And I think a lot of that just comes from my passion for what I do. So I am Tanya Barrett. I'm the executive director of the McDavid Group Charities. It's a nonprofit that was started by Jim McDavid back in 2016. Okay. He was pulled there was a shooting of the Dallas 5 police officers that were brutally executed that day. And he heard something on the radio sitting in his truck that they were talking about raising money for the families of fallen law enforcement. Yeah. And it was something small, and not small, not that $30,000 or $50,000 is small. But when you're talking about the loss of a life and 5 officers and typically law enforcement's not paid a lot of money, he just felt very motivated to give back to those who serve our communities. And with that, he decided he could throw a golf tournament. He could throw a golf tournament. Okay. He could raise some money, and he was just gonna do what Jim McDavid does, just blow it out of the park. He reaches for the stars all the time. So within 3 months, he decided in September to throw a golf tournament. Threw the golf tournament in December that year, and I believe raised $150,000.
And he did it in 3 months.
3 months.
Wow.
He leaned on his community. As I mentioned to you before, I've been listening to your podcast, and so much of it has to do with networking and connections. And Jim McDavid did just that. He leaned on his network, he leaned on his connections, and he raised $150,000 in 3 months back in 2016.
Yeah. Oh, and I think what actually kind of probably helped him do that is the story. Yeah. Like he had, he brought the story to the community. He, like you said, leveraged the community and the network that he had. I mean, just you talking about it. I mean, if he was here, I think there would be more passion, but you still even have a lot of passion for it too. So yeah, I can definitely hear it.
Yeah. So thank you. I love Jim McDavid, his heart, his soul, his wife, Maria. They are an amazing power couple. They light up the room, any room they walk into, but they bring so much to like the organization and just getting behind our law enforcement officers. But since 2016, I came to know the organization in 2018 when I started volunteering for him. My son and I had moved to Florida in 2013, which was 2 years after my husband, a Virginia state trooper, died in the line of duty. So we had moved originally to Pompano. I had moved up to Jupiter for high school. I found out about Jim McDavid and this organization he had started because his organization was solely giving to another organization called Concerns of Police Survivors, an organization that I knew all too well because myself and my 2 children had been through that organization. They are kind of like the first hands-on after an officer dies. They help provide support. They help give you counseling. They get you through your first National Police Week, which typically always happens in May every year, but it's usually within that first year after an officer dies. So my kids went into this kids program and they came out and they were like, Mom, we met other kids like us. My
Mm.
kids were 15 and 6 when my husband died in the line of duty. So when they came out of this program, and I still get a little teary, I mean, I still do. They came out of this
Oh my
feeling
gosh.
validated and acknowledged because kids don't really understand, like, nobody understands death. But then you
Right.
have a law enforcement officer die in the line of duty, and there's this huge funeral. It's on all the news stations. My kids were like, "Why are they talking about Daddy on the
Oh,
news? Like, why are they talking about you? You two went to high school together." And I was like, it was just, it was, it's just all very strange. But here they go into this organization through Concerns of Police Survivors, and they meet other kids like them. They meet other kids who have been through this massive funeral, very, on
right.
the media. And so it was just like, it gave me this like sense of, this is where we need to be. So fast forward, move to Florida. Jim McDavid starts his charity. I find out about it after I moved to Jupiter. And I'm like, I need to help this man raise more money for cops.
Love it.
I need to help him. So I started volunteering just my time, like however I could. My son was still in high school, so I like would just give back as much as I could. Fast forward to 2020,
Okay.
COVID. And I was just looking to get out of the house. My son was home all the time. I was like, I need to find something to do. And I found Jim's regular job was hiring for a receptionist. And I walked in and I was like, hey, I'm going to take this job, but I want to run your charity. And he was like, we're not going to have any paid employees. We're not going to do this. And I'm like, no, no, no. I know that your charity has the potential to grow. I know what you already do. And I know that there is a small niche in here where you're missing. The fallen law enforcement community is missing a piece. And he was like, what's that? And I said, it's college. And he said, well, I don't understand what you mean. And I said, there are so many opportunities out there, and we're missing the boat. These spouses that have two small children at home that never thought they'd need to go back to school, these kids worried
Oh,
about money. I said, my 6-year-old came to me and said, Daddy died. Do we have enough money to stay in our house? I said, fast forward to right now, he's a freshman in high school and he's worried about where he's going to go to college. He's a smart kid and he's worried,
wow.
like, Mom, how are you going to afford it? What are we going to do? And I had already 9 years earlier, my kids are 9 years apart. 9 years earlier, I'd already walked this line with my daughter. Like,
Yeah.
what could we afford? What could we do? And it's just, even though there's like all these organizations that want to help law enforcement officers, I know there's ones out there now that they'll pay off mortgages. And while that's all grand, nobody thinks about how does that look on your FAFSA? Nobody thinks
Mm,
about, where did you invest your money? Because I'll be the first one to tell you, spouses of law enforcement officers usually get some chunk of change, but nobody takes into account that your husband was making no money. And now this is supposed to get you through the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years of your life.
and especially if they have children, what does their children's future look like
Yeah.
in retrospect of all of that too? So I understand what you're saying.
And
Yeah.
then if your money's not invested right, or I mean, I have friends who they just put all their money in a savings account. And then their
Oh,
child goes to college and they have to fill out a FAFSA and like they get no money. There's no scholarships available because the financial need, it doesn't appear to be there when I know for a fact that it really is
is.
there. Anyway, 2020, walked into Jim McDavid's office, said, I'm going to run your charity. And so hence now it's 2025, been running the charity for 4 years. 2 years ago, I finally had the title of executive director. I became the first paid
Congratulations.
employee. Yes, thank you. And I love that I get to give back to a community that I know all too well. I love that we have now created this scholarship fund. It's called the America's Heroes Scholarship Fund. We
Okay.
host it through the Community Foundation of Palm Beach and Martin County. And even though it's hosted through there, it is nationwide.
Yeah.
Um, it's third party because because I am a spouse, I do not want to have any biasness towards any families because I end up talking to a lot of them. I end up talking to
Mm.
a lot of the spouses, a lot of the children when they're filling out our application. This year, we had over 52 applicants. We have 5 spots.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's
So,
that's so much need, and that's not a lot of ability to help all of them. I mean, obviously we can't help everybody, but that's less than 10%. I
yeah.
mean, just under 10%. So it's
Yeah.
just wow.
Well, our scholarship is very unique in that we offer these spouses and children $40,000 over 4 years. Like once you've applied and you're accepted,
Yeah.
you become one of ours, become part of our little Golf for Cop McDavid Group Charities family,
Yeah.
and we don't let go of you. All you have to do is maintain your GPA, and you get that $5,000 a semester guaranteed for 4 years. So we love that. We love that
Yeah.
that's what we're able to offer. I always say that I want to be the charity that we can just pay for your college education rather than even having to worry about scholarships or, but I do realize like
Yeah.
that's where a small niche is that, even there are some states who offer state supported schools like free tuition. But even with that, because Virginia happens to be one of those states, that even with that, I was still paying out of my pocket $1,000 a month
Okay.
for both my kids. And it adds up. It,
Everything, yeah.
it
And
all adds up. And granted, I know I'm fortunate, but I also I want kids who are bright and want really good futures, and I want to invest in futures, and I don't want to limit them to a state supported school if that's not where their best efforts could be seen. If there are these 4.0 kids and they want to go to Stanford or I don't wherever they want to go. I don't care where they want to go. I don't ever want them to think, "Oh my gosh,
I can't.
I can't. My mom can't afford that."
Right. You actually opened up my eyes to a few things that I didn't even think about. And I want to say it was 2016. And my dear friend that I was living with at the time, she was struggling because her brother was shot down
Ugh,
as well. And so I saw it day to day when she was, there with me, and I, console her, and I just like helped her through it as best I could. But, it wasn't my family. So I didn't actually have the same connection that she did. And she actually took his dog so that,
mm,
this lovely dog was a part of both of our lives because she was staying with me at the time. And just the sweetest
yeah.
dog. Um, but it was so hard because, it's the loss of anyone is
Oh yeah.
challenging. But when they're taken in a way that it's not natural and there's no reason for it, that's when I think it's the hardest. And it's so complex. And even for children, like if you think like you're talking about, your son was 6 years old.
Yeah.
How does that process and going through and hearing all these stories on TV and just like it's a lot to deal with.
Yeah.
It's super hard. And then looking at the future, because everyone looks and it's like, oh, okay, this police officer, this law enforcement person has lost their life, and it is public and everybody hears about it. But who's looking at the families? So I'm glad that this charity is here to kind of look at what else can be done. And maybe not everything, but what else can be done? And I think that's a good question to open up to everybody.
Yeah, and I think it's a great question because I feel like yes, these families get forgotten about and nobody realizes and I know I mentioned it a few times already, but law enforcement officers, I mean they're like teachers, they're not paid for what they
Mhm.
do and it's so unfortunate. Like I wish we could pay them better, invest more in them. You know, it's all these public servants, right? That
Yeah.
yeah, that we just need to invest in. But law enforcement officers is what I know, and it's how do we help these families thrive? How do we give them tools and help them thrive? And that's exactly what McDavid Group Charities does is we make sure that either through concerns of police survivors, getting them all the hands-on programming and all the support they need, that we're also, so that's how we start to set them up for the higher education and making
Yeah.
sure of these scholarships. One of the things I realized with the scholarships was this past year in Virginia, for example, I did mention how some states do take care of their fallen law or their first responder families, because it can
Okay.
be any line of duty death in most states. In Virginia, for example, they proposed a new budget. The budget was signed into law, and my son's college education benefits were stripped away from him. 14 years later, here he is. He's in college. He's at University of Virginia. Like, he is at one of the top 3 public universities in the United States. He worked his tail off to get there.
Sure.
And he said, Mom, what are we going to do?
Wow.
And I was like, dude, I'll figure it out,
Right.
And
We got to look for
yeah,
solutions.
I
Yeah.
said, I'll find a solution. And he was like, well, I can't apply for your scholarship. And I'm like, nobody, you can't. Conflict
No.
of interest.
Yeah. Well.
But I was like, we'll figure it out. Like, I said, number one, I'm going to fight. And we'll start there. And just so happens that it was like, we had the budget redone. We know it'll get him through
Okay.
his 4th year of college,
Good.
but it doesn't help for the kids under him. I went to
Right.
Virginia and I went to, there's local chapters of Concerns of Police Survivors. I went to the local Virginia chapter. 63 children. We're not even talking a lot. We're talking 63 children of fallen law enforcement officers. 63. He was one of 63. And I was like, how do families plan for, this is what we're going to do? My son and I planned it out. Like, this
Right.
is how we're going to do it. And then all of a sudden it's just gone. And I have friends that, their kids are 7, 8. All of a sudden, they're not even planning for college yet. And this benefit's already,
It's gone.
could have been ripped away.
Right.
Correct. As it stands today, it's still in place.
Good.
That state statute is in place. But what scared me was figuring out, because I'm not in politics, but figuring out that because of political winds and just things shifting and agendas, that's what I ended up finding out, was that it was just political agendas. Somebody wanted something, so they were like, it was just very odd. And I was like, wow, this can happen anywhere.
And to any
state,
any program, anything. Yeah.
any program, any state, anything. And I thought, if things can be taken away this easily, like, I want to, and again, I go back to 52 applicants this year, and we're offering 5. And I know that we're going into our 10th year for an event, and we have grown massively. In the last 5 years, the organization has gone from, I think 5 years ago, we took in $500,000. This past year, we took in $1.5 million. We are growing,
Right.
but we're still not even meeting the need of where these educational benefits need to be.
Well, and you brought up a really good point, and the government can change things on a dime. Like, things happen, if they're trying to, like, make a political statement and they're pulling funds here and there. The people that are still in need, that's why nonprofits exist, and gives the community what they need in a different way that is not necessarily always geared by government. Like, you can find private donors that are going to support your cause because they love or appreciate what you're doing for the community. And there's other grants that can come out there from foundations and everywhere else. So, and I'm so grateful that I got to learn even more about nonprofits as I've continued my journey and changing our business structure. Like, now that we're focusing primarily on just helping nonprofits, I get to see it even more. And I'm hoping that more people in the community can also see it.
So much of what you're doing and Visuals by Momo, like, trying to establish the connections and these networks. And I shared with you that I was listening to some of your podcasts on my drive down this morning, and I was just blown away, because I feel like and even if I go back to 2016 and Jim McDavid and him leaning on his network, it's one of the things that I have found as the charity has grown is that our connections, our network, so much of that has to be in play. Like it's word of mouth, it's sharing, and nonprofits, you're right, like in the community. That's why nonprofits exist. There's foster care, there's cancer, there's
Mm,
sex trafficking, there's so
yes, so much.
much, and everything is such a good cause. But I feel like at the heart of it all is, it's even if I go back to you saying that energy shift, it's like getting to know people, like just investing some time, networking, leaning in a little,
Yeah.
you know, because that's how we all grow. Like nonprofits, businesses, for-profit businesses, it's how we all grow. We all grow by leaning in, getting to know people. It becomes about people.
It
Like
is.
the world should be about people. We should get back to more of that,
Yeah, we
right?
really do need to get back to more of that. Yes,
But it's really
100%.
just about people, and it's, sharing the stories and people willing to listen. Thank you, Chris. But, but it is all of that. It's all of it. And if we look at that as a whole, like it's how we grow as a community, it's how we grow as a nation, like just investing in each other and sharing that.
I love that. I, I I I really do appreciate that because it's about the connections that we're trying to build. And when you're talking about Jim basically going out into the community and he already had these connections, it was him being able to share the story and the way he felt about what happened
Yeah.
that started a whole revolution in building a whole nonprofit from scratch,
From nothing,
from
from
nothing.
nothing, from nothing. I mean, how we went from 150,000 to 1.5 million in less than 10 years. Like
That's growth. That's
it's
beautiful.
it's beautiful, but it wouldn't be there without those connections. It wouldn't be out
Correct.
there without the community. It's not there without the people.
So that actually brings us to one of our main questions for the podcast is collaboration. So to get you from that first event, and obviously you won't have all the years, but you have a good
I
portion
have a
of
good
them.
chunk, yeah.
Um, what collaborations have you guys established, either with other nonprofits or for profits, to help you succeed and get to the point where you are today?
Gosh, I feel like a little bit of everything, right?
Yeah.
Um, I think it's really just making those connections with whatever vendors we use, whether it's the photographer, videographers, um, gosh, even we on the golf course, we have cigar rollers. We have used them since year one. Like
Mm,
they know every year like we've just established these personal connections with most everyone. And I say to Jim McDavid all the time, one of his biggest, he calls it his Achilles heel, and the thing that raises him is his loyalty to people.
yeah.
And it's one of the things I've learned to look at him for is like, where are his loyalties? Because those are people who have stood by his side.
Right.
But also, like this past year, one of the new sponsors that I brought on was Ideal Nutrition, which I don't know if it's here in Broward or not, but in Palm Beach, it's two West Palm Beach officers created this prepackaged meals. They're $7.50 or $7.99 a meal, but they couldn't go out and eat healthy for a decent price. So they created
Sure.
this. And so it just so happened I got a connection to them and I brought them on as a sponsor. And now, I like to say they're like part of our family too, because now I don't want to just do business with people. I want to get to know them. I want to, I liked getting to know that they were West Palm Beach officers. Now they're a marketing person. I know him very well. First time I met him, like you get a big hug from me because that's me. But I think all of that is just so important is, creating those friendships and, there yes, even in business, I feel like we still need those friendship. One of our biggest things is I don't want to bring on a sponsor where we're not also trying to elevate them. You're elevating us. How can we help elevate you? So, how can I foster either more connections? Because we're still a smaller nonprofit, we don't
Hmm.
really have the social media to like, we do share it all. We just don't have the following to
Right.
that it's not going to hit or make or break somebody. But how can I introduce you to someone else? And
Right.
that's the piece of it that I feel like carries everyone far, not only in the nonprofit space, but creating those connections, those, it just helps. One of our, I would say he's like a golf entertainer. He
Okay.
reached out yesterday and he was like, "Hey, can you connect me to this person who did some video of me?" I'm like, "Yes, I can." And now
Perfect.
this golf entertainer, he's nationwide. Like, yeah. But he was like, "No, no, I need the person who videoed me at your event." And I'm like, "Okay, I'll connect you." So, but it's just those little things and they go far, right?
And they do. And I honestly think that's the most impactful and the most beneficial when we actually think about collaboration.
Collaboration's a great word.
Yeah. So when we think about collaboration, it's not always like, I'm going to give you an apple, you're going to give me an apple back.
Yeah.
It could be, I can help you with this service or I can give you a discount. But it could be that next connection that you introduce me to that propels my business forward. And just going, can I introduce them to somebody? That one question is huge for me. Like if am able to help assist any nonprofit and they're like, you know what, I need to make this introduction for them.
Hmm.
It could change their life. That's amazing. And it opens up so many more doors. So that collaboration aspect is so invaluable that we just forget about it so much. Sometimes like we're just in our, sometimes we just get stuck in
Yeah,
our
it's true.
lane. We just get stuck in our lane and it's like, okay. And we always talk about stop and smell the flowers.
Yeah.
Always say that statement. Like, but there's a major truth to it. Like, okay, if you're always in your lane, do you ever see the other people that are supporting you, carrying you along the way? And are we looking at them going, oh, what am I doing with them? Or how am I helping them as well?
Yeah, it's so
So
true. I do want to say, I want to get back on, like you asked about other nonprofits
yeah,
too. And I do feel like it's not there. I mean, a lot of people in nonprofits. Tonight I'm volunteering at another nonprofit. I do that a lot.
yeah,
Um, but I don't feel like they're all like none of them are competition. We're all here to support each other. And if I can see like a hole in what something you're doing at an event or in general, and if I can help and say, hey, exactly with the collaboration, right? Hey, here's a great person for that. Or here's a great company to help assist you with that.
right.
It's just huge. There's another nonprofit, their executive director, he and I, like, we just saw each other at another nonprofit gala 2 weeks ago, and he was like, "We really need to have coffee." And I know he gives back. There's both they focus on scholarships as well, but Palm Beach County kids.
Right.
And I just thought, but how is there a way for us to partner together? Like, how can we help each other? And I know he's of that same mindset. Like, how can we work together? Like,
Yeah.
we're doing something very particular, he's doing something very particular. And, but there's always that way to how can we help each other? And, you know, there are so many people, and I think in society now where everybody thinks like, oh no, I'm in it for myself. And it's, and in the nonprofit world and in the for-profit world too, we need to kind of let that go down and like look at everybody as, hey, I'm here to help, I'm here to
Mm-hmm.
do. But I do love, I do a lot of the Association for Fundraising Professionals. And so that's a lot of nonprofits that show up to those meetings. And it's just great to pick somebody else's brain.
Oh yeah.
Completely different nonprofit, just they can have a completely different thing. And I just want to go, well, how do you do this? Who do you use for marketing? How, what photographer are you using here? What photographer, like,
There's that aspect that you can actually learn about other, you know, companies that could assist and who they're using. But there's also this beautiful connection that I feel like you're going to look at their organization from an outside viewpoint
mhm.
through a different lens. So if you're struggling with something, talk about it because honestly, that one other person can go, "Hey, did you know if you tweak it just here, everything gets solved?"
Yep.
And it's turning that dial like, "Oh, the fridge is it's set at 6 and I just need it at 4."
Right.
Like and like you don't even think about it, just a small little turn of the knob and everything just kind of like flows into place. And I think that when you actually build the solid relationships that you can actually have more full transparency, because sometimes you're still just building that
Hmm.
relationship, trying to figure out where people are going to land with you. But when you have that full transparency, you can be like, this is what is really I'm struck with. What is your organization doing, or how is your organization handling this? That's when you both grow, because you're able
Correct.
to talk and you're collaborating and you're working together to make a bigger difference. And the biggest thing that I truly also feel is when you collaborate and not focus on being out for yourself and
Hmm.
everybody's competition, you're actually giving more engagement.
Oh
So
yeah.
now I'm sharing what you're doing, you're sharing what I'm doing. And by the end of the day, we're it's not even just doubled, it's like quadrupled or 10 times, just because more people are looking at it in a different way.
Yeah. No, it's beautiful. And I
Mm-hmm.
love that within my little group that I've created, we all volunteer for each other's
Mm-hmm.
events. I mean, they all work for different nonprofits, but yet they'll come and volunteer for me and I volunteer for them. And there's even just the beauty in that, just having someone,
Yeah,
because I feel like sometimes nobody cares as much as you do. Like,
it's true.
I like nobody cares
You can
about,
feel that way, yeah.
you know, the nonprofit that I run. Nobody cares about it as much as I do. Like, I care so much. I care so much about the people, and nobody really cares as much. But when I make these friendships, and especially when they're also running nonprofits, I feel like when they show up and help volunteer or help give advice or whatever it is, they care at a level I do. It may not be about the same.
Niche.
Yes, but they care at a level I do. We all want each other to succeed. And
Right.
I think that's the important piece of that with nonprofits and, helping each other and raising each other up too. Everybody cares. Like there's that genuine belief in all of us that we just care. We want everybody to do well.
You're all trying to make the world a little bit better.
Yes.
That's really the truth of it
Yes.
all. It's like
Yeah.
you're trying to make it a little better. And we're doing the same thing. So the biggest thing is, like, I just had this conversation yesterday with someone, but it's all about, and nonprofit is still a business. It's just where
Yes.
the money is allocated.
Ooh, I just watched, and I'm probably gonna mess his name up. Dan Pilata. Have you heard of him?
I don't
He
think so.
did this TED Talk,
Okay.
and I'm not sure if this piece of it came out of his TED Talk, and I'm probably misquoting him, but it was all about nonprofits, and
Yeah.
he said you don't want the epitaph on your headstone to read, "I saved on overhead."
Oh,
I want it
wow.
to every single one of us in this room wants it to read, "I changed the world." So, and I get it. I get that nonprofits, like there's this whole like percentage and this, and I want people not to get so stuck on that. Yes, there is a percentage, but yes, we are all trying to make a living
Yep.
and do better in the world. And sometimes to do better in the world, we might have to spend a little bit more money on some things. And it all comes out in the wash. But at the end of the day, we're all wanting to change the world for the better.
The biggest thing, and I think this is the hardest part for a lot of people to realize, like, oh, you can just be volunteer based. Okay, well, I have to have 1,000 volunteers over 1 year, all doing 1 hour at a time or two, and it's never going to be consistent. There's no, like,
Yeah.
it's so hard to, like, comprehend, like, who's managing these people.
And I just said it. Who cares as
Oh,
much as you do?
right.
I mean, yes, there are volunteers that show up and they do care.
Oh, 100%.
They do.
But they can only do so
They
much.
can only do so much.
Right.
I'm right there with you. It's easy for me to have a volunteer step in and me to hand them a handful of thank you notes and help me handwrite thank you notes.
Sure.
It's great. It's easy, but to keep doing that over and over again. And then what happens, for example, that volunteer I just thought about that helped me write some thank you notes, she helped me all of last year and now she lives in North Carolina. So,
Mm, yeah.
it's hard. It's hard with, yes, you can be strictly volunteer based. I don't think you're ever going to grow
You
with a
can't.
strictly volunteer based. You know, if you
Right.
want your charity to never grow, never move, you can dial it in at having volunteers only.
The problem that comes in it, and it's actually the last question I'm going to ask you, is how do you leave a legacy? You can't leave a legacy if you don't treat your nonprofit as a business.
Correct.
Because now, how does it survive? If it only is run by passion and by you and volunteers that are helping you, there's no growth, there's no sustainability, and there's no legacy.
No.
And so that's something that's extremely important that I think we all need to consider, because life is too short.
It is too short. And, and that's, I will say most people in nonprofits are probably a lot like me. Like you can work 70, 80 hours a week, not even think twice about it
Right.
because we're very passionate about what we do. Like I
Yes.
don't consider me answering a kid's phone call or a mom's email about the scholarship at 10, 11 o'clock at night work. It's
Right.
just not, it's not in me. For the one other employee I have, if she's not answering calls at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night.
Sure.
I don't expect her to. But yes, it is leaving that legacy. Like, how do we grow? How do we really put our mark on the world? What do we really want that epitaph to say? Like at the end of the day, I want it to say, I changed the world by doing this.
Right.
I want the nonprofit to grow. I want it to be, one of these bigger, more nationally known ones. And I want to get there, but we're not going to get there playing small.
I'm glad to hear that you have that mindset, because that's honestly one of the biggest things is you have to have your mindset change to go, we need to grow, and this isn't about me. This isn't just about me. It's about helping the world.
Yeah.
And so once you have that new vision and you have the new clarity, that's when you can actually leave that legacy. So, as I ask everybody that's leaving our show, what is the legacy you personally want to
Ah,
leave in the world for future generations?
I want every child of a fallen law enforcement officer to know that even if higher education isn't meant for you, but I want them all to know their mom or dad's never forgotten. They are they're always remembered. I want you to know how important it is to say their name. And I want you to know that if you ever want higher education, that we want to be the charity you come to. We want to be able to pay for your college. We want you to succeed. We want to inspire your dreams, inspire your hopes. We want you
Mm.
we want what your mom or dad wanted for you. And we want to make sure that we can make that happen without you having to think about what finances or how they even come into play.
And it's building the future for
It's
generations.
building the future for generations.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, how can we change the world if we're not investing in it? Like,
Beautiful line.
we need to invest in these futures. And if these
Right.
kids are too worried about money, there's no hopes and dreams there. They're too worried about the finances. Let's remove it.
Remove one obstacle at a time.
Yep.
And that's what you're doing. So,
One obstacle. Chris, thank you so
well, no, I
much.
was going to thank you. So, and you beat me to it. So, thank you again for joining me today here on Visualize. One last piece. How do people get in contact with you?
So it is website is the McDavid Group Charities.org. And then my email is Tanya, TANYA, at the McDavid Group Charities.com.
Perfect. Thank you again so much. Thank you for sharing your story. I know that was a little challenging, and I'm glad that you were, able to do so with me.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for hosting this and creating these networks and conversations. I think what you're doing is beautiful, and I'm really appreciative to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Visualize. We hope that the inspiration and practical insights can help you foster stronger connections and meaningful change. Don't forget to subscribe, share the episode, and leave us a review. To learn more about Visuals by Momo and how we support collaboration and storytelling, visit visualsbymomo.com. A huge thank you to everyone out there listening. Until next time, remember, collaboration fuels change, and your connections can inspire the world.